1 in 2,000 people have narcolepsy. It's said to be caused by a number of triggers, including autoimmune attack in the brain, or by something like an infection during childhood or teen years. These events affect cells that produce hypocretin, or orexin, which is a neuropeptide hormone produced in the hypothalamus that exerts important influences over sleep, arousal, appetite, and energy expenditure. Any disturbance to this hormone can result in narcolepsy, and it doesn't have to be autoimmune. Anyway, today I'd like to give a warm welcome to Sleepy Devon, who will talk about their experience as a narcoleptic. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
Awesome. I just realized my light's not on, but no, it is. Perfect. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so in the media, narcolepsy is, of course, always portrayed as someone who just kind of straight up falls asleep from time to time, whether they're behind the wheel of the car or, in the middle of the forest, wherever you are, just, falling asleep. And excessive daytime sleepiness, I suppose. And I was wondering if there's any truth to that, if that's ever happened to you.
So, yes and no. With the media, it tends to portray symptoms of cataplexy in which they fall over quite suddenly. And so, I don't quite experience that, but I know those who do, like, they're awake when it happens. For me, it's when I'm sitting down at a place, the excessive daytime sleepiness just kind of kicks in, and then I'll start to get kind of like slower, and then within like a few minutes I'll be asleep if I'm sitting down too long. So humorously, it's happened on a date once. I ate dinner and they were still eating. I passed right out on them.
Oh no. Well, yeah, that's not good. First date, I assume.
Yeah, so we were friends, but it didn't last.
Too bad. Anyway, so but you were mentioning that when it's related to when you slow down or become kind of less active, it actually comes up more.
Yeah, so it would, in a good example, is every single class I've ever had, like, I'm sitting down for that 90-minute period, and sometime between that time, I tend to fall asleep within a 5 to 10 minute window and miss the lecture.
Oh, wow.
So,
Have you ever had, like, a teacher get angry they didn't, know or something like that?
yes, I had one experience where I was able to take a study abroad trip, and I wasn't quite diagnosed yet, but I knew something was wrong. And so I was overseas in China, and I'm from the United States. And no matter like what I expressed to her, I felt really bad because it was kind of like, I'm sleepy, I don't know why, I'm probably gonna fall asleep in the class. And it happened every single day, and she was very on me about it, like, you're gonna fail the class. And so
Oh,
that
no.
was a interesting experience to have.
Wow. So was there ever a time in your life where you didn't have narcolepsy? And if so, do you remember there being an illness or an event that triggered it?
So my onset was about 14, 15 years old. And so before I had it, I remember being pretty like normal teenager. And so what I don't believe there was ever a illness that triggered it, but I wonder if I hit my head one too many times, and that might have been a trigger, or if it was more genetic.
Were you doing a lot of like head hitting sort of activities at the time?
I used to be very into ripstick riding, those little two-wheel skateboards. And so
Oh,
one time in particular, I was riding back home from my middle school, and I clunked a piece of the sidewalk just right, and I remember flying up like 5 feet in the air and then hitting my head, but that was probably like the dramatic teenage moment when you fall like that.
interesting. Okay. Hmm. And so now, how long have you had it for?
And so I'm 22 now, so
Okay.
my symptoms have been going on for about 7 years.
Do you know? I didn't look this up. Do you know if it ever can get like better, like go away?
I did look this up recently, and so they say once you hit your 60s, it can, um, probably go away a little bit by then, but of course, by the time you're 60, you're kind of tired and used to it.
you're,
Well,
you're tired anyway. You're tired anyway at that point. Yeah. So I have this narcolepsy chart that I found. I actually forgot to post it. I should have. But anyway, there are a few types of narcolepsy that I was reading about: type 1, type 2, and idiopathic hypersomnia. And I was wondering if you knew whether or not you had any one of those types of narcolepsy.
yeah, so I'm pretty sure I have the type 2. And so for the viewers, type 1 has cataplexy and type 2 is without. While with idiopathic hypersomnia, you just have a hard time like waking up. Um, and so I wake pretty easy, but I experience daytime sleepiness and then like very lucid dreams and hallucinations.
Okay.
And so for me, I believe it's definitely type 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have my chart up now, and I'll show it I'll edit it in for the audience to look at. But I wanted to go through sort of each of the symptoms, just to, I guess, go through with you to see how you arrived at the type 2 idea. So, of course, you have excessive daytime sleepiness. And then I was also going to ask it says for type 2, sometimes they'll have sleep paralysis. Have you ever had sleep paralysis?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. But you did mention that you have had hallucinations.
Yes, I get hallucinations pretty frequently as I'm about to fall asleep.
Okay. What are they usually?
And so usually, and it's especially noticeable if I'm talking to someone and it's late night, I'm trying to go to sleep, but it's a tendency for me to hit REM real fast. So before I even like go to sleep, it's like I'm hitting REM.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
so the other day I was having like a very serious conversation about like moving an apartment, and all of a sudden I'm talking to my sister about her curly hair. So that conversation, it was apartment. And then I intrude with, man, I think my hair is getting like healthier. And the friend went along with it, but it took me a second to realize like that conversation was not real. And I just intervened with this random ass thing into my life conversation.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. Like I've never heard of a hallucination like that. Like I mean I mostly have been looking at kind of the scarier parasomnias, of course. So it's either just kind of dots, like very mild stuff, like seeing dots. I see dots when I'm very tired, just like in the corner of my eyes. But they can be enough to freak you out. But and then all the way up to just like full on like sleep paralysis demons or whatever. But I've never heard of just imagined conversations. That's really interesting. You have any?
Yeah. Oh, hallucinations. I don't quite understand them, but I know it's definitely a spectrum of the severity and like least severity they are. But yeah, it's like a movie flashback. Like I'll be sitting in a chair, and just all of a sudden my reality's just like switched, and it only lasts for a few seconds as I like enter in and out of like wakefulness and dream like state.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. So I know you said something earlier about cataplexy. I don't recall. Did you say that you have it or you don't have it?
I don't have it to my
Okay.
knowledge. Cataplexy onsets with extreme emotions, and it's present within type 1. I don't tend to have like extreme surprise emotions, so I wonder too if that's a factor in if I were to show it or not. But as far as I know, no. And so yeah.
I'm not sure if you defined it earlier, but just for the audience, cataplexy is extreme muscle weakness, and it's said that 70% of people with narcolepsy will have that.
Yes, and so it can be triggered by like laughter or if a friend like scares you. And so if you experience like a sudden change of emotions from like normal to like your heart, like, oh, that's fun, then like that typically would be what triggers the cataplexy, and you lose muscle tonus. And so this is what is portrayed in movies quite frequently with a narcoleptic when they fall over suddenly. And it's interesting because it's like when that happens, it's actually they're not asleep. they're wide awake, they just don't have that control within their bodies.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty interesting too. Have you ever had difficulty staying asleep during the night?
Yes and no. And so with narcolepsy, I think it just comes down into having a healthy like day-to-day habit. And so if you stay on top of it, then you can sometimes sleep well during the night, but it's not for everyone. Everyone's different, and narcolepsy is a spectrum. And so as long as I like don't eat or drink 2 hours before I go to bed, or I don't just no shenanigans before bed, so you can have time for your body to like calm down, then I sleep through the night fairly easy, and then I wake up anytime like something were to trigger me, like an alarm or just like a partner moving or something like that.
That can wake you up.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And then like you'll often just not be able to get back to sleep.
For me, it depends, and so
Okay.
sometimes I can just roll over and I can be right back asleep within minutes.
Well, that would certainly be ideal. Do you ever feel that you have had a restorative restful sleep? Because this is another thing that some narcoleptics, apparently, I wouldn't know, but some have never had what they felt was a restful sleep.
So having it for as many years, it's hard for me to really give an exact yes or no to that. With narcolepsy, they say the feeling we have each day is about equivalent to staying up for 48 hours. So if you go 2 days without rest, that's about equivalent to how we would feel. And so
Wow.
it's strange because I think I feel relatively used to it, but I also feel like I'm on a battery that dies really fast. So whereas if I get a normal 8 hours of sleep, and normal people could power through the day and go to sleep that night without naps, my battery drains close to 1 to 2, and I would typically need a nap then. Otherwise, I'm gonna likely hallucinate during like events in the evening.
Wow. So like what amount of nap, how long of a nap is good enough to recharge you in the afternoon?
I've been putting it about an hour, and so I don't have a consistent schedule yet, being a college student, which isn't ideal with narcolepsy, but I try to set an hour aside for the day to give me time to like at least fall asleep and then wake up within that time frame.
Okay.
So about 45 minutes a total of naps, or 20 if I'm feeling emotional that day and can't sleep.
Interesting. All right. And this is a bit of an interjection, but out of curiosity, like it was kind of coming back to one of the first things we talked about, but can you, because when you're more active, you tend to be more awake. If you're feeling tired and you like exercise or something, do you feel yourself waking up more?
Yes, a little bit. And so that would likely delay that delays my sleepiness for sure if I decide I'm gonna go for a run rather than nap. And so it definitely recharges me, but I would still probably crash soon after the nap or the run. My bad.
Okay. So like you feel like extra tired following it, would you say?
I would say the usual tired, but it's been delayed.
Okay. Interesting. And then I had another kind of just curiosity question. So is there a time or an activity where you're doing something where you feel the most awake?
The most awake? That's a good question. With the pandemic, it has thrown off my schedule a little bit. So I've been working and going to school from home. So my most awake period would be a lot different today that I used to have. And so I would put it about like close before bedtime, funny enough, for these days, because I would usually be trying to grind out as much last minute homework as I can, and then that keeps me energized until like I get it turned in, then I'm like, okay, we gotta stop.
Okay. Interesting. What do you study out of curiosity?
I am an architect student right now.
Oh, okay, okay. So I think I've got a question that maybe is related to that later. But anyway, so do you ever experience sleep drunkenness or confusional arousal, waking up disoriented and confused? Is what that means for the audience.
Yes. It depends on how much restfulness I've had during like the week. And so if I'm not taking care of myself, I'm more likely to experience that versus not. And so really it's just if I experience it, it's like, oh, I gotta go to sleep. But I guess maybe right now even I'm feeling a little like out of it, but not too out of it. I did not take a nap today, which was foolish of me, but it goes down to this where like I start losing my train of thought, and then I start trying to decide words and I can't figure out a word to say.
I think that if we could have this interview end by you just falling asleep on me, that would be perfection, honestly.
That would be.
Yeah. Could you like describe like what that feels like, the sleep drunkenness or the confusional arousal, like when it does happen? Because it sounds spooky almost, right? Like just waking up and not knowing what's going on. And like if you've had that, please describe that experience.
It is. It's sometimes I don't sleep, especially if I don't sleep within the same household I'm staying at, and I wake up in a different place. It tends to be a very surreal experience where I wonder, like, am I still dreaming? And then I have to like take a second to like know my surroundings. If I'm at home, it's more of a matter of like losing track of time, kind of laying there, and it's like 7 a.m. at one point, and all of a sudden it's like 9:30, and that whole time frame is just like a daze where like I think my partner like left the house, or I don't know if they did, and so like once I'm fully awake I have to like look out the window and try to see if their car's there because I don't remember them leaving, or if I remember anyone like coming home, or just having like a lack of sense of like what my train of thought is, if something's real or not real.
Interesting. That kind of sounds like a lot of people, myself included, when we just have an afternoon nap that starts during the day and wake up after dark. I've heard a lot of people who don't have like narcolepsy describe that, or I guess that is what confusional arousal is. Like you just feel like you're still in the dream in a way, and you're not sure. That's really interesting.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what it feels like for the audience. It's waking up and it's dark and you still have your day.
Right. Cool. I already asked if you hallucinate. That was interesting. And then, is there anything that you avoid doing because of your narcolepsy?
Not completely. I would say with narcolepsy, you can pretty much do everything a normal person does. I try to avoid heavy breakfasts in the morning, so like I would rather go for fruit over bread. And then I tend to be the old lady of my friend group where I try not to stay out past like 1 a.m.
Okay. But there's no like activity where it's like, I guess, dangerous to fall asleep. Like what about like driving on like a long road trip or something? Because like even normal people almost fall asleep, right? Like not, you know what I mean by normal. People who don't have narcolepsy. Yeah.
Yes. So those with narcolepsy, we do have to be a little extra careful about our driving. I've been newly diagnosed, truth be said. Like even though I've had my symptoms for so many years, I've only been working with my doctor for about 3 months since my like official diagnosis. While during that time frame, I've been driving quite frequently. She is very adamant that I do not drive without medications.
Oh, okay.
And so what I would say to that is to know your limits and be careful. So if I exceed 30 minutes and I feel myself getting tired, I pull over at Quick Trip and I get like a drink. Quick Trip's a Midwestern gas station.
Mm-hmm.
And to get like a 5-hour energy or something if I'm going through something like for the day, or if I'm heading home, I'll just head home as soon as I can and get that nap in.
Okay, makes sense. Has there ever been a time where you actually felt like you maybe had like a close call in terms of your safety and falling asleep? I mean, you already gave the date example, which is like kind of sketchy, but I mean, obviously, like if you're in a public place, you're fine. But like, has there ever been like a time, it could be driving, could be anything, where you actually felt like, wow, that was like a close call?
Yes, unfortunately, and this is why I'm at battles with my doctor because I am 20, like being 22 now, but when I was early on with my narcolepsy, about 16, 17, I was working a job at an amusement park, and those shifts got easily really long from like about 12 hours. And so I remember driving home once and I fell asleep at a red light and I ended up kissing the lady's car right in front of me. And so I remember like all of a sudden like wide awake, like, oh my God, what have I done?
Oh no.
And, and so the lady, she reminded me of the gentleman from Lilo and Stitch with the ice cream cone, because she was holding like an ice cream cone. She had some sunglasses and she was really calm. She like got out of her car and she looks at her car, she looks at mine. She's like, you fell asleep? And I was like, yes, I'm so sorry, ma'am. She's like, go home. And so that's after that incident was when I like was like, wow, like, there's something wrong, but I never had the resources to pinpoint it. But that was when I got into my habits of like no more than this amount, and if I'm tired, take caution, because that was scary for sure.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that story. And then, right, another thing I was going to ask you, are there any of your daily behaviors or anything that you do inspired by your narcolepsy? So I was kind of curious about that earlier with asking, what you were studying, but I mean, maybe architecture is inspired by narcolepsy, but perhaps not, perhaps not. Anyway, are there any daily behaviors or anything that you do that might be inspired by it, or that you do differently because you have it?
Yeah, so I would say yes to both with that and architecture.
Oh yeah.
With my vivid dreams, it really drives my creativity. So I have like a Google document of my dreams that I try to record. Sometimes I go through phases where I don't record them, but I've got like 70 pages now worth of these crazy stories of like, usually I'm pursued by like the government, which I don't know, maybe that goes into like a nightmare thing.
Mhm.
But it's like I tend to be like not like a ninja quite, but I've got like all those cool like action movie moves, and I've got like all this stuff in a document. So I try to work on comics now, but I'm not good at comics, and that's with architecture school. It's more so like taking that creativity and then putting it into a structure. But I'm about to take a year off, and I'm excited to kind of just work with art, dive into art, and then I've been working on a Etsy page with like enamel pins lately that I just with all this creativity, I suppose I try to put it wherever I can within my daily activities.
All right. Cool. So I actually didn't know. I hadn't read that about narcolepsy and vivid dreams. So you have vivid dreams, like
Yeah,
every night?
just about every night.
Oh wow.
I tend to get, that's why I tend to get them mixed up with reality sometimes, because it feels very real to me. But those details within it, I realize that's not legit, and I'm able to try to distinguish that. But usually that's what contributes to like my sleep drunkenness in the morning, is like waking up from this dream that I swore was my reality, and then realizing what my reality is and what my reality isn't.
Interesting. And now I gotta ask, because this is nightmare theater. What about vivid nightmares?
Yeah, so for me, the scariest ones are those that like something happens to my family, or I miss like an important deadline. And so it would have to be based off like real stuff. And I realize I have like kind of senses of abandonment within some of my nightmares, but I don't know if I experience them like on like a crazy nightmare, because I think when I do have the nightmares of like a giant spider coming at me, I'm able to just like be a badass within my dream and take a sword and stab it. And I feel very like in control of them, so I don't know if it bothers me. But sometimes there's serious ones where I get like a friend that's like, I hate you. That really hits me in the heart. I'm like, oh.
So you're usually like semi-lucid though.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that goes into something like, I remember once, like, I think my sisters died in the dream, and I started crying really hard because, like, those two are, like, they're my world. And all of a sudden, I stopped, I'm like, this is a dream. Fuck this. I, like, rewinded time, and then I got to, like, replay the moment. So that way they're, like, they're back with me, they're okay, they're safe. And
Nice.
so I don't lucid unless it's like an emergency like that is what I've noticed, but I'm hoping to gain more control of that because I don't like to encounter those terrifying thoughts.
Right. What would you say was your most terrifying nightmare ever?
There's this one I had when I was young, and there was a puppy, like, running around, and I was like, oh, this is a really cute puppy. And my mom picks up the puppy, and she's like, yeah, it is a cute puppy. And all of a sudden her face like morphed into the like underwater fish thing with those like really long teeth.
Anglerfish?
Yes, anglerfish, my bad. And yeah, like she bit the puppy's head off and ate it, and I'm like having that image of like my mom's face with like the long angler teeth and that puppy that's no longer a puppy-ish. It was just it was dark.
That's brutal. And then the dream ended there pretty much. Like, did you lucid your way out of that one?
I was too young to know.
Okay. All right.
It was a young one, but it stuck with me. That one was very like.
Yeah,
wow.
Anglerfish are some of the ugliest like animals on the planet, aren't they? That'd be unpleasant for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if they're ugly per se, but yeah.
Okay, well, I'll be sure to edit in a picture of one, and we can poll the audience on whether or not they think it's ugly.
Yeah, they should comment if they think it's ugly or if they think it's cute. I'd be curious to know.
All right, sounds good. Is there anything about narcolepsy that you wish the world knew?
And so what I wish the world knew is that the onset of it tends to be within teenage years. And that's what causes it to get underdiagnosed so frequently, because we have these teenagers that are starting to fall asleep in random places, and we brush it off as like lazy, busy, or if they're overreacting or hormonal, which I get but at the same time it's something that just it's overlooked. And so if you have a sleepy friend, and if there's a sleepy teenager that you know, like, get them to a doctor. So like if the early intervention, I think, would make things a lot easier for narcoleptics.
Yeah, I actually find myself thinking about sleepy people I've known throughout the years, and they definitely were not diagnosed as narcoleptic. But yeah, I'm now kind of wondering, because it's, not always as extreme as we see in the media. But thanks for talking with me today, Sleepy Devon, and feel free to give a shout out or plug to anything, perhaps your Etsy.
Yes, and so my Etsy and my Instagram is at Sleepy Devon. I've been working on some art and merch, and I'm about to drop a Godzilla enamel pin, but I hope to work on some narcolepsy awareness bits here soon.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too.